There were a lot of things where people are like, oh, like you said, make it complicated or make it more legalistic. I saw the bank as my partner because if they thought there was a red flag, I should probably not go forward too far. And that's the same thing. So I generally tend to find partners. So even the sellers are like partners to me. They're trying to make sure I'm going to be successful. I want to make sure I find a bank that thinks that I should be successful. And when they're asking me questions, I thought, okay, let me answer to what reality is. I'm not trying to convince them, but so I'm not going to go out of my bound to make stuff up or show complicated answer. I'm just simply going to put this is what my mind says. I think a lot of times people think the banks are oh, this is just like a numbers thing for them, but they genuinely have a vested interest in your success.
You're listening to Before You Buy or Sell a Business, hosted by Jared Johnson, the top SBA lender in the country. On this show, we break down business acquisitions, talk to industry pros, and provide real-world advice for buyers and sellers.
All right, welcome back to Before You Buy or Sell a Business podcast. Today I have Sushant on, and I'm really excited to talk to you. You actually acquired two businesses pretty close together, so there's a good amount to kind of unpack there and talk about. I know there's a lot of people that are very interested in that, so hopefully we can get to it. Maybe we can start out with a little bit about your background and how you ended up buying a business.
Sure. So my background actually is in technology consulting. I spent a large part of my career working for big Fortune 500 companies, implementing technology solutions for them. So I knew my way around technology landscape, and I knew when COVID happened, everything was starting to become more digital, and then how things were starting to work more and more in terms of retail or businesses, mostly to be online. So then I thought about, is this all that I want to do in my life, and continue to work in consulting, which I loved, but it's just kind of a point where I thought, hey, maybe I should try something different. And with COVID, everything going online, I thought it might be a good time to start investigating, looking for a business. But everything was so up and down through 2020, 2021, 2022. I couldn't really figure out what businesses are good, what's a viable option, the market settling, and things like that. And when about 2024, when things started to settle down more so and look more normal, we came across a really good opportunity, and my wife and I talked about that and said, maybe we'll give it a go. And one thing led to another.
Yeah, that's great. So when you were doing consulting, was there something specific within consulting that you specialized in?
I did. I implemented ERP solutions, managed large projects, but I did particularly for retail industry. I had large clients that were already either brick and mortar retail stores or they were trying to go onto online. So I was very familiar in the technology landscape when it comes to supply chain, inventory management, and solutions like that, and taking companies into more of an online. But I had no idea till that time on e-commerce platforms like Shopify and things like that, or anything from a small scale business perspective. I was more confident on like large scale enterprises and how they deal with their problems.
Yeah, that makes sense. So great. So yeah, I mean, no, consulting can be very broad. So thought we'd try to clarify that a little bit. Okay. So, and then when you decided that you wanted to go down the path of trying to find a business to buy, how did you start doing any research or searching in general?
Well, I looked at the websites for BizBuySell. I usually used to browse it more often, trying to understand more about what types of businesses are for sale. I contacted a few and talked to the business brokers and learned whether some things are more challenging for me versus not. And mostly, I think it was BizBuySell and talking to business brokers. And then it helped me to talk through a couple people from the banking side and funding side. If I would reach out to some bank and say, here's a deal, I'm looking for it, and they'll ask questions about things. And I'll go back and ask questions to the broker and then go back and forth and increase my learning curve. I just was never shy about reaching out about an opportunity. And I knew in a way the type or size of business that I was looking for or I would probably qualify for. And I narrowed down in those.
So how many do you think you looked at before you settled on
100.
the first one? Hundreds. Wow. Okay.
hundreds.
Yeah. Did you find any way of looking was easier, better? I mean, you had to become a little bit frustrated with looking at hundreds of businesses.
Yeah, I think it's a period of over a period of time. Like to me, I learned what are the key important things when I down select a business. At first, I was just applying, and saying, okay, I want to get an information. I want to get information about this business. And then there's barrage of information, and you get all these NDAs to sign, and then I sign them, and I get these P&Ls and things looking at them, and then I started to understand, like, hey, if if it's got this, then I'm more interested in it, and I'm more inclined to go further with it. And then I narrowed it down to specifics. Towards, I think, 2024, I'd say it'd be about 20 or 30 businesses that I inquired about and I was interested in, and then finally kind of zeroed in on this. There's the only four or five that I've had a seller call with, because I don't know if the process is usually you find a business online, you tell the broker you're interested, just like a house, and then the broker reaches out to you and says, here's a non-disclosure agreement about the business and we'll share more information. And when they do, they follow up and say, what did you think about it? And if I was interested, I would go for a seller call because I wanted to understand from the sellers what kind of motive they had behind selling. Did they have competing priorities, or they were just tired, or something that I could do? And I wanted to understand their situation and how they operated, what kind of time commitment they had and stuff. So I had about 4 or 5 seller calls off the hundreds of listings I went through. And then based on the sellers, I would look through more so and find out what is it going to look like for me to do what they're doing.
And what were the things you were essentially looking for on those seller calls?
I'd like to really, with small businesses, it's difficult to understand. They're not publicly listed. They're not financially audited for the most part. So you're relying on the seller to give you information that you want to trust and believe. So for the first foremost thing for me was to look at the sellers and say, would I trust this person? Would I be able to work with this person? Do I think that this person is telling me the truth, or would work with me as I buy this business and transition? Or they're going to be more frustrated and keep me at an arm's length and wouldn't be able to work with me as well. So first step was kind of me understanding the seller, their personality, and how they operate. And then I would look for some basic kind of cleanliness in a way, like how well they maintain their books. And if there were a lot of seller ad backs, then it didn't add to the trust factor for me. Because if they're doing a lot of ad backs for this or that reason, then I'm like, I'm not getting too comfortable. But if they're standard ad backs and not huge substantial portions, then I'm more apt to look further. So it's one, like the trust factor for me, and then how clean they keep their financials. That was one. And how much do they understand about where money comes from and where money goes out? Because if they don't understand it, I can rely on that information as well.
Yeah,
right?
that
So
makes sense.
if they're showing to me like, well, I don't really understand, my accountant does it, talk to my accountant, I'm like, maybe that's not for me because I don't have an accountant to talk to an accountant. So if you're like, yeah, great, thank you. So then I would further dive into the basics of the finances. Okay, they're trustworthy, they do good due diligence, like they keep their house clean. And then I would like try to understand how much time they spend. And if they underscore the time they spend or over emphasize the challenges, I would kind of gauge that a little bit. Like sometimes sellers say, oh, I don't really work 10 hours a week. It's just makes money on its own. And I just turn on my computer and it starts printing money. Like that to me was like, usually would be a red flag. I would be like, I don't know. Everything takes time.
Yeah.
And it's not as simple for small businesses to kind of just get automated. So then I would establish like what kind of processes and procedures do they have? Do they operate in a structured way? Like, do they have certain days to do certain things, or they're just all over the map? And because that kind of tells me how the business would be operating and where I needed to look for due diligence too, because if they were saying, oh, I really don't know about this or that, and then I was like, okay, maybe I have to focus there. and see what's under the hood. And then I would look for minimal financial gain after everything's said and done for me. What would be the take home, and is it worth spending my time from this job to that? Like, where would I spend more time doing this? So, and then I would look at finally like the inventory. Like sometimes sellers have no inventory in the sale. Sometimes sellers have a lot of inventory in the sale. So I'd like to understand with them when I talk to them what they thought about their inventory. How well were they kind of keeping up? Was it rotating? Did they know what their cycles were? And mostly just try to understand, do they know their business? And that partly comes to me from my consulting background, because I consulted with big businesses, and kind of just interviewing the seller came a little bit natural to me in a way. Try to find out if they demonstrate to me that they do take good care of their business and they understand their business. Because if they don't, then I'm inheriting a problem. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. And we get a lot of people that's kind of what they're trying to explain. You know, if they feel comfortable with the seller, of course, with the financials, with kind of the way they're doing things, maybe they can identify some areas to improve, but you can't necessarily change maybe the seller's ethics, or how they were operating the business from a financial standpoint. So it sounds like on the first one that you bought, you felt that you were comfortable enough to move forward on it. So maybe walk me through that process, identifying what you felt was a fair price and negotiating the actual purchase price. Maybe walk me through a little bit of that, and kind of tell some listeners what you focused on and what you think are some items that definitely need to be focused on during that process.
Sure. Well, the first thing was for me to even select a business, right? Like, is this the right thing for me? And how do you know that? You've never operated or bought a business. You have no idea, like, is this good or bad? So first thing for me was to say, okay, can I operate this business? Do I bring anything to the table? After I talked to the sellers, then this is a clothing brand, a women's fitness and fashion brand that I acquired, the first one. And I had no idea about leggings or how Lululemon would operate or anything like that. So I'm like, and it's not very kind of appealing. I'm not innovating anywhere. I'm not maybe creating a multi-billion-dollar app somewhere. It's not fancy in a way like that. So I was very hesitant. And then the sellers, when I talked to them, they were the face of the company in a way. And they were doing a lot of self-marketing. And I thought, how would I sell women's apparel? I have no idea. Right. And then if I do, then I'm adding a lot more cost by getting models and people like that to come over. And what would that look like? I have no idea. I kind of turned my brain off a little bit for that part. And I said, hey, anything's a good business. Does it make money? And if it's a good ethical business that runs clean, what are the fundamentals of this business? And it had a really strong foundation in customers. It had real good customer database. The customers were repeat customers. And I felt confident about, okay, there's a product and then there's a market. And they figured that part out. And that was a big part for me. So then I said, okay, well, that makes sense, because the products are always very interesting. Certain times you don't know what to start with when you have a business, you want to acquire something. So I kind of turned my brain off and I said, I'm just going to go with it and then take a step at a time. So then I did not have any understanding of what the value would be. There was a value that the business was asking because of the broker. And I've heard over time, like, oh, it's a 3 multiple, maybe it's a 4 multiple, maybe it's 3.5. And I'm like, so I put myself in a kind of lower part and a higher part. And I said, I may feel more confident just kind of making $100,000, and then the bank has an X amount. So it's comfortable to me if I multiply by a 3 multiplier. And I came up with my number. And then on the top side was what they were asking. And I think it really then went down to me negotiating and saying, starting from my bottom number and saying, hey, here's where my bottom number is. So I put together a letter of intent for them. and I offered them the letter of intent. At that time, I really didn't have a lot of idea about a lot of what's in the inventory and all these things. So it's more like, do you like a house? How much would you pay for that house, right?
Yeah.
And then I realized that the more and more you work on something, you get attached to it. So the more I thought about this business, the more I was engaging with the brokers and things, and it became a little bit more, oh, maybe I want to do it. So we settled on a dollar figure, which I thought was kind of in a good spot for them. I always wanted to pay the sellers the fair price also, because I mean, it's their life's work and they're leaving this behind and moving on. So I always thought there's a fair price, but nobody knows what that is, to be honest. Then I had known that the bank would do some valuation and we'll find out. So I kind of did a leap of faith there, and I said, okay, here's a price I feel comfortable. There's enough money left over based on what you're telling me. And then we put together a letter of intent, and I sent the letter of intent, and then they agreed to that proposition. Then very quickly I started to figure out which bank, and I got introduced to you for that, which was very kind, and you told me this is the process and this is how long it takes and so on and so forth. And there's valuation, there's this cycle to it, and I just kind of took a step at a time. I thought it was very kind of from a financing standpoint, like getting that first understanding of, do I even qualify for a business? Like, why would they loan me money? Or like, how do I demonstrate my experience? Like, how does that my technology consulting relate to women's fashion? So I was a little bit in the dark at first to say, well, and then how do I apply? What's loan program? Everybody says SBA, but then there's this, that, there's so much complications. But I think, fortunate to kind of be with you and get it simplified in a way. Then there was this part of due diligence. So once I got the letter of intent, then I got you on board. You said that was a good deal. You had some concerns overall, but you said, yeah, we could look forward to it. I got the letter. It's basically like, yes, you can buy this business. And then we turned it into a purchase agreement, because once I had the financing, after that, I think it was a part of the due diligence. I had no clue how to do due diligence. I'm not going to be able to go on Shopify and verify, do they actually make that much money? So I asked for a bunch of stuff. I had this whole huge list that I had found from the internet with a lot of information in it. And I had over time, like, kind of tweaked what I thought was relevant. And then I asked the sellers, they were very quick and prompt in turning the documents over. They had most of it prepared, because most of the sellers, if they're looking to sell, they've prepared a lot of this kind of information already. I looked at it and like, I have no idea. This is a PDF of a bank statement. It's got like 5,000 lines in it. So obviously they're making money. I don't know, how do I go about it? And then I asked for an inventory list. I'm like, that's great. I have no idea what these products are. Because it's not like you can look at this and say, oh, there's 50 cars in the lot, 5 of them that are Hyundai and 5 of them are Mercedes. Like, you're like, oh, this is SKU number, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, great, you have 20 of them. This is awesome. So I was kind of like going back to my leap of faith with the sellers. I was like, they could make a mistake, which is acceptable, but I know that they're not lying to me on purpose. So I kind of did the due diligence, then took a second look at what was important. So I started to focus on high dollar values. So I looked at all the bank statement with high dollar values, and then tried to verify with the Shopify whether these kind of sales were coming through certain spot checks. And then I took 2 or 3 months of the P&L they had provided me, and I tried to tie it back. And I said, okay, you said there were X number of sales, so let me pull up the bank statement. Did Shopify deposit that much money? And there was a little bit of a difference because Shopify takes fees off and it's not never a direct one-to-one. So it was a learning curve. But then they were very open to kind of exchanging and learning more information as together too. So then we verified the dollars. I verified the inventory. In e-commerce businesses, there isn't a lot much that you could technically verify. I verified their customer list was legit in spot checking. I knew that they were actively posting Facebook posts. They had X number of likes on Facebook. Their email showed great open rate. It went out to 130,000 people. It was 80% open rate. So I was more spot checking to find any red signals more than saying this is 100 out of 100. So those were, and then marketing side, I looked at the Facebook spend and I said, okay, well, they say there's this much Facebook spend. Let me go back and look at Facebook. And then Facebook had pretty much 99% the same kind of number. So after the financial due diligence, the customer side of things, and looking at some big stats, I also looked at like, oh, the website sessions. Do people actually come to this website, right? Like, so if or it's it like from just some other country like Canada or China or whatever. So I looked at like, okay, most of the website sessions are from the United States. They were very spread out uh, from all over the states. So I was like feeling more confident that it's not someone that's just trying to sell a business that doesn't exist. Because that was my biggest fear, me not knowing enough and buying something that's way overstated or wasn't even legit to start with. So that was kind of the fear. And because you can give somebody the money and it's not like you can always get it back with them. So, and then I wanted to be comfortable in terms of how many hours that they work and how I would operate it. And then we went through step-by-step process on the lending side, which was very open and seamless. And I think your team provided like, here's a checklist, here's the things that are going to be needed, here's the things that are going to happen. And there's like a step-by-step guide on the documents that I needed to collect. So while I was doing the due diligence, I was working on collecting documents like my pay stubs, my W-2s, other financial records and things like that, and what I needed from the sellers. So there was all the list was in there, and then I kind of worked with your team to put them on back and forth, and kind of got that loan approved, and then we did the closing, which was very big, and then they said, now it's your business.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of steps that you kind of go through in order to try to get comfortable with due diligence. I find it interesting that you sort of went with your feel, and if you could sort of identify if the sellers are being honest. And I feel like not enough people do that. Maybe they do, but not in a way that you did it, where a lot of times they're wanting to completely spot check and review the financial statements. They want to get legal involved. They want to go examine inventory. They almost make it a bit too complicated. And I think it also depends on the size of the transaction and then how you feel up front. And it seems like you were comfortable with the seller from the beginning. And so you were sort of like, okay, let's take it a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further. And if you continue to feel comfortable with them, then it's a little easier to start, kind of relaxing a little bit and saying, okay, now let's like actually understand how to operate the business. And I think that's a good way to still do the due diligence. I do remember on a transaction, we were extremely busy and it took a lot longer than we would like to get through everything, but it also sort of gave you an opportunity to really dig into the deal. And I think there was a couple little changes here and there on the structure that helped everybody get more comfortable. But ultimately, it ended up working for you. I also remember I hadn't heard of the business. I had done some research when you sent it to me. And then I was visiting one of my friends in California, and she said, "Hey, if you want some water, go ahead and grab it out of the fridge." And I went to her fridge and I went to open it, and I saw a sticker on the fridge for the company, and I was like, "Wait a minute! Like,
Wow.
do you order from them?" "Yeah, I do. They're great." Blah blah blah. I said, "Okay, well, I'm working on a deal right now," and I that was about all I could say, and it was just cool. Okay, good. Somebody actually recommended their product and everything. Cause like you, I don't wear leggings, so it's like, just try to figure out what you could do other than asking my wife or some of her friends, so ended up working out pretty well. But okay, was there anything during the process that maybe you would have done differently, or obviously you did it again, so we'll get to that in a second, but maybe there was something during that first one that you felt like you wish you would have done different, kind of looking back after you took over the business?
Well, I think the lending part just kind of making a comment about the lending part, was very similar to like a mortgage, but a little bit more probing in terms of, am I really thinking through how am I going to operate this business? So when I got into that mindset with the underwriter questions and things like that, and I tried to put honest answers out there, like this is literally what I'm thinking. There were a lot of things where people are like, oh, like you said, make it complicated or make it more legalistic. I just thought, I saw the bank as my partner, because if they thought there was a red flag, I should probably not go forward too far. Because, and that's the same thing. So I generally tend to find partners. So even the sellers are like partners to me. They're trying to make sure I'm going to be successful. I want to make sure I find a bank that thinks that I should be successful. And when they're asking me questions, I thought, okay, let me answer to what reality is. I'm not trying to convince them, but so I'm not going to go out of my bound to make stuff up or show complicated answer. I'm just simply going to put this is what my mind says. And that helped me think through that a lot. So I think a lot of times people think the banks are, oh, this is just like a numbers thing for them, but they genuinely have a vested interest in your success, like because they're lending you the money and then they're working through the deal. And then underwriters, they ask questions, but they're really just kind of asking questions to make sure you're thinking through it. So I thought having the bank as your partner versus like somebody that you have to answer to wasn't ever my kind of attitude about it. And the same thing with the sellers. I thought that I want to build a relationship that they're helping me with. And the only thing I would rethink or do a little bit better, which I didn't do twice, would be I would do a lot better transition planning. I would do a lot better understanding of how I'm actually going to do day one. Because the first 30 days are rough. And then after the 30 days, all the kinks kind of start to work out itself. But the first 30 days were rough. So I would say like I had a really good relationship with the sellers. And for the first business, I had them fulfill for the first 30 days while I was kind of in the back end. And I think I could have traveled. We could have done it together and things like that. So
okay, so almost needed to rip the Band-Aid off sooner. Yeah, makes sense. But yeah, I remember. So when you bought the business, you moved the inventory to across the country basically to fulfill it yourself. How did that go? Was that as smooth as you would think? I mean, do you feel like that was the right plan looking back?
Well, one thing was that, and again, we're like on a strap budget, so I don't have like too much budget at the time to go, okay, let me go fly 5 times to California and, I'm going to sit in their warehouse for 7 days and do things. And while I was also actively doing other things, so it was kind of like, I got to juggle my time and balance. But we did a lot of FaceTime. They showed me a lot of videos. I had make small videos and show me each product and they'll talk through it. And then when we closed and we had this inventory, they showed me again on FaceTime, like, hey, here's the inventory. Here's all the stuff we're going to send you. So we basically ended up doing is we said, here's going to be a truck show up at your door and load everything in the truck and we'll see them here in like 7 days in Ohio.
Oh, wow.
So we then had to turn the shop delayed because we couldn't ship for 7 days. And then we got the stuff here. Then I realized it takes a while to open 7 or 8 U-Haul boxes, I mean, like those a container load of stuff. So I'm like, okay, how would we do it? But the sellers were mindful. They said, hey, here's the stuff that sells slow. So we're going to put it in the back. Here's the stuff you're going to need the first day to start shipping out. Here's the stuff for packaging that's going to be all in this side. So it was kind of like I took some help and I think I could have done a lot better, but it worked out in the end.
Great. Yeah. Well, I'm happy to hear that. And I believe you're still doing really well with that one. And I believe if I remember correctly, you had improved pretty quickly and had kind of got your bearings and were doing really well.
Yeah, it was a good timing. I think the other thing I kind of timed it this way and certain things happened to get there as well. Because, we were talking about the delay. But I did not want to get too close to the October, November, December timeframe.
Yeah.
But I also did not want to miss the October, November, December timeframe. So when we transitioned in about September, that was kind of like the ideal time was August and September for me because it's picking up enough, but it's not in the peak season. So if I'm making mistakes, I'm not like ruining the annual cycle of things. So in that 45-day to 60-day period, when November came, December came, we were pretty well up and running. We had all the products lined up. We were able to take advantage of that. And that kind of gave us the confidence because right off the bat, we were in the best season for retail, right? And then it gave
Yeah.
us the confidence, like, okay, this thing's making money. I think this is great, and I think we can do better. And then we started to improve things and understand better. A lot of different product ideas and things like that this year.
Yeah, makes sense. So, okay, so how long was it after that closed before you said, "Hey, I want to go do this again"?
It was, I think, in January. So we bought it in September. I started the first process in about, I think, March, and then we were able to close by September. Then the second one, I started to look about January. I found the right business about February to late February. And then we did some seller conversations during March, and I applied for the second one. I was like, okay, I'm ready because it's 6 months now.
Yeah, I remember you calling me and saying, "Hey, so I have another one." I said, "You sure you want to do it again?" And you said, "Yeah, I think." You said, I think I know what a little bit more, and this one is a little different." And and I said, "Okay." And I started looking. I said, "Oh, this is cool." I also liked the business. I thought it was cool. It was a little bit easier for me to relate to,
My
but
standards were so low because I remember that calling and I said something and you said, well, at least you haven't tanked it. And so I was like, yeah, I haven't tanked it. So I was super excited, like, hey, I still have a good running business. I mean, I haven't gone down the hill yet. And I'm like, yeah, I can do it again. So it was kind of funny call, but
yeah, well, that's what we get a lot of, right? We get people that say, "Oh, my philosophy is I'm going to buy a business, and then as soon as I kind of get that one done, I'm going to do it again and do it again and do it again." And we're telling people, "Hey, slow down. Let's make sure the first one is going okay." And then we also have where they come to us and the first one has gone completely bad and they want to go do it again. I'm like, no, 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 no. Go back and fix the first one. You haven't proved to us you can do it. So that was kind of the first test was, how are you doing? And we looked and you were doing better than the prior year. So I was like, okay, you know what you're doing. This is working. Then we started looking at the one you were targeting, and it was doing great. And was a little easier, I believe, to manage and move the product and everything like that. And so maybe we can talk about that one a little bit. How'd you find it? And then what was the process there, if it was any different than the first one?
very similar in terms of like getting to find it. I was on BizBuySell and I looked through and I got through this listing. I called the broker. They shared their information. A lot of times, like good businesses, when they first go on, there's barrage of people wanting to kind of put some things in there. I talked to the broker and they said there's a lot of people interested in this business. And I said, well, there goes my leverage. So I said, okay, well, give me the information. What is it? Let's talk about it. And I'm always transparent and open with people. So even with the brokers, I'm always thinking that they're there to help me. I'm never of the mindset that they're not there to help me. So I asked him like, hey, here's what I do. Here's what we've done. And here's what I think I'll be great for this. Here's my ambition on things like this. And this was more in a tactical space and search and rescue kind of space. And again, I was like, I have no idea. I've never run a search rescue tactical operation. I've never been supplying to government and things like that. I'm like, I have no idea how this is going to work. But this is what I bring to the table. And the broker thought that I would be a good fit for the business. So then I didn't really have a negotiating power on this one because there was the market demand supply. And I wanted to make sure that I was kind of able to secure the due diligence piece. And then I talked to the seller and I understood from him how he was operating, what the product lines were, what these products looked like. And I was like, this is very interesting to me and I can see myself doing this. And I thought that it would be a good business. And I asked them one fundamental question, how many employees do you have? And he said, none. And I said, this is awesome because I don't want employees. And then I said, where do you run this out of? And he goes, my garage. And I'm like, awesome, because I have a garage.
Yeah.
we're gonna do the same thing. And it was him and his wife doing it. And I said, hey, there's a lot of check boxes. It doesn't look like I'm inheriting complexity to add to what I already have going. I then reached out to you and I said, hey, I've got this another one. It is a little bit higher value than the last one. One thing I did want to make sure, even with this one, that there was substantial inventory for me to carry out for the first year compared to me investing a lot more again in inventory. And that supply chain can be really tough nowadays, going through all the international market environment and so on. So they had decent amount of inventory. So I kind of valued it a little bit higher on the higher side. I got more passionate about the products, and then again, same process. Can I trust the seller and all that thing? And then it worked out well from that perspective. The banking side was a lot easier because this time I had gone through it, and I knew the people, I knew the team, and so when they reached out, I'm like, yep, here's a list of things. I've already got it, and you had a lot of the documents from 6 months ago, so it was a lot faster. And then I think the underwriter had a few questions, and I was able to answer them relatively quick. And I think it was a lot shorter, if not
Yeah,
4 weeks maybe.
Yeah, I felt a lot better about that too, because on the first one it was challenging because of just how busy we were, and then there was a couple things that we wanted to really try to mitigate and stuff. And on this one, I said, "Oh, this will be much easier." And then I remember calling you. You're like, "Wait, we're approved. We're done. We're moving." I was like, "Yeah, that's
Yeah.
usually how it goes. I promise." Like at least I can show you that I wasn't just saying that before. So it worked out.
I couldn't believe the underwriter had like two questions or something, because a lot of times your team did this time differently, where they had preempted a lot of underwriters' question in the package from day one. So they had like series of questions they had asked me earlier, and I had all the write-ups and things like that. And then when it got to the underwriter, the file was a lot more prepared too. And they only asked me two questions. I'm like, I'm not sure. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe they're not looking at my file anymore. So when you said it's approved, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
It does help when you do a lot of the upfront work, and that's something we've been trying to continue to get better and better at. And it is easier to do when we're fully staffed and we've got the right people, and I've got great people that support me. So that definitely helped and made it easy. And you'd already proven that you know what you're doing. So it's a little bit less kind of prying and digging into the transaction. So
I felt this time, I wasn't, the first time was like the firstborn thing where you're too eager. And this time I was like, okay, I kind of understand how the emotions go. So I'm not going to be too vested if it's not the 28th that we close. And so because you have to give each other time, and I'm like, okay, even if it isn't the exact same day, it's a day here, a day there, it's fine. The biggest thing that I would do differently is I would go get a life insurance sooner this time. Because that was the longest part of getting insurance companies to kind of go through that process and get that life insurance completed, which we had no control over.
Right. Yeah. And we try to get that started at the time we submit to underwriting. We push people to do that. Not everybody listens. But sometimes it's also outside of our control. They may need, something from medical or something. And then it can definitely delay things. And it is always challenging when you and I don't have any control over it. We can't, push it forward. And so it can get a little frustrating, but it makes sense to get that going early. So, okay. So that one went a lot smoother. Once you closed, took over, how did that go?
So this one was a lot bigger learning curve for me, I think, personally. We'd gotten better at fulfillment. So we knew we could operate from the space that we have, and we knew how to fulfill, print labels, ship stuff out. And my wife and I, we were very confident about that part. So the problem was you don't know what that product is that the order is for a lot of times. So this one had 315 different SKUs. There were nuances between a SKU, could be a right-handed or a left-handed, which I did not know. I saw, oh, it's this, and I pick it up, and I'm like, okay, well, there's obviously nuances on these type of things. So very specific, and I did not have as much product knowledge, but I had the great seller. He supported me. We were on FaceTime 4 hours a day, and I'm like picking stuff up. I'm like, is this it? He said, no, it was in a red bin. So I went back and I'm like, well, your red bins kind of got moved in the U-Haul when I brought them here.
Oh.
But he had like stuck with me through the first 3 weeks and said, "Hey, here's this." And then I started to know what these were and what to look for on the order and things like that. So it was a lot rough. This one also had a lot of business to business.
Mm.
So there were a lot of retail, but there's also B2B, which was new for me, where you have to prepare a quote request, you have to send those things out, and you have to follow up. And those were large orders compared to just a pure retail. So that was a little bit learning curve to go and talk to people about like, hey, you want 300 of these? And then where am I going to get them from? I had no idea about the supply chain, talking to the suppliers. So there's probably 7 or 10 different suppliers that we source from.
Mm.
And I had to learn which product comes from what supplier. But once you get it down, it don't change that often.
Yeah.
So so
Yeah.
so then it was a good 45 days till I felt like even today I was on a call. I mean, I texted him and I said, "Hey, what is this?"
Well, that's great that it's still available. You built a good relationship
Yeah.
with both sides on both sellers, and it definitely is something that you need down the road. One thing that I think that sellers often miss is when they're operating their business, they never think to go and put maybe a manual together or standard operating
Mhm.
procedures together. That would have been very easy to turn over to you and say, okay, here's a picture of this belongs to this SKU. There's a lot of notes that someone could put together, and I think sometimes you're so busy operating the business that you sort of forget to work on that. But I have done transactions where the buyer tells me the seller did put everything together for me. They'd already had it done before they listed the business, and oftentimes they can fetch a little bit higher of a value. But it's great that they were there for you to help you out and keep things moving.
Yeah. I mean, I think with small businesses, there's so much tribal knowledge.
Hmm.
But I think it would be great if there was documentation, like how to do this or that, or it just, yeah, it'd be great. But I think it depends a lot on the business. Can they even document certain things?
Yeah, makes
And,
sense.
and
So,
until you look at it, you have no idea what that statement says.
and so how's the business doing now?
It's doing really well. We're coming out of the June, July timeframe, which was kind of the retail June, July. And now we're going up, picking up steam.
Cool.
A lot of B2B stuff is coming along. And then my return rate was a little bit higher the first month because I shipped a few wrong products, but I wasn't
Oh,
afraid of making a mistake. It was a great learning curve. And then now I'm very pleased that I don't really go through a month and there isn't a complaint. So, so that was a good. But overall, I think we're doing really well. I'm excited for it. Lots of opportunities. We're preparing for the end of the year, the September, October, November timeframe now. Hope we have a good season like that.
yeah, great. So what's next?
I was going to talk to you about that after. I
Okay, well,
already
we
have
will.
another one lined up in a
All
way.
right.
Um, to me, I think once you figure out a system on what works, um, I would like to work under the framework of what is working for me,
Hmm.
and kind of go to the point where I think that this framework is working. It will work till we scale enough that we can kind of either hire employees or do things differently.
Yeah, yeah, no, it makes sense. And you've done something, a couple things that a lot of people sort of aspire to do. We get a lot of people that talk to us about e-commerce. They like being able to operate it themselves. They like businesses that don't rely on a lot of employees. And then they like to do, multiple transactions. So you've done great with that. I'm so thankful for you coming on and taking time to talk to us. I always ask two questions at the end. So, first question, do you have a mentor or have you ever had a mentor?
I've never had an official mentor per se, but I look at everybody and I try to learn from everyone that's around me. Like even yourself, you've told me a few good things about like how the banking world works, how the SBA loans are, what to think about, what are things. I just generally tend to have good contacts with people that I think I can go back and tap into more so than anything.
Great. Yeah.
So I have a
And obviously,
network of people that I go back and say, what do you think about this? And see
right.
what they
Yeah.
think.
And it really does make a big difference, and that's something I look for in individuals when I look at their experience, their history, their resume. Is, do they have a network? Do they have people that they can rely on? And coming from consulting, you obviously have to know a lot about whatever industry you're consulting on, but you do usually have really good contacts outside of that within that world. And a lot of consultants that buy businesses do really well, and not necessarily because they've consulted and they're, kind of advising people, but mainly because they have a really good network. They can pick up the phone and call somebody, and almost no matter what the topic is that they don't know, they usually know someone that does. And it's a
Right.
lot easier to pick up the phone and call somebody than somebody that's been head down in a business, just learning that specific business and how to operate it. They don't have somebody that can help with HR. They don't have somebody that can help with legal. They don't have somebody that can help with logistics, all those different things. And so having a good network definitely makes all the difference in the world. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that to me is very important. Like you said, right? Like if do I have a good relationship with my bank? Do I have a good relationship with my lender? Like they're invested in my success. I have other, like in the garment industry, we have a lot of people that suppliers I can go to and say, what do you think about this? And even the suppliers that we have now, I can say, hey, what do you think about this? And they'll tell me no, no good, or how that's working for them. We even had a situation where we ordered 900 of a certain item through our suppliers in China. That was a newer supplier, and it turns out that that was faulty and defective. And we had shipped out 900 pieces like that. And then I'm like, okay. So then we reached out to them, and said, okay, what's wrong with it? And we said, hey, we're going to have to kind of raise a complaint or whatever. And then they were very cordial, and they fixed the problem. But I asked some people, and like, hey, how do you deal with this? Or like finding network of people. They said, oh, you tell them, or they start to advise you about things. So that was helpful. I think you do get in problems, but if you have good network that can guide you through the problem, it gets easier.
yeah, so your network becomes multiple mentors, which is great. So you've been very successful with the businesses you've taken on, the consulting, everything else. What motivates you? What drives you to be successful?
I think it's just, I feel more confident and more every time I do something. So that kind of little bit of moving forward progression drives me more. I generally am very positive and optimistic person, so I like seeing things grow. And I find that having good finances around you is always good. So I'm always trying to improve my financial position and looking through and saying, okay, because once I would like to get to a point where I don't have to work. I would like to work where there are certain things that I'm doing that are setting up, and these businesses are operating where I'm not necessarily have to work, but I'm able to work. So that's kind of where my driving force right now is. And then uh, paying the bank is a really good motivation.
Yeah, we like that.
So I got to make these payments so then we can keep going. So
Yeah.
it just, I think it once you have a business and you can see it moving and you can see it growing, it's a very good personal satisfaction for me to see that I tried something and I'm able to operate it.
Yeah,
Because
that's
a lot of
fantastic.
people think that you're just going to fail, or you try something you don't know and you're just going to fail. And so it just drives me more than when I'm seeing it work.
Yeah, well, it continues to build confidence and give you the motivation to continue moving forward. And obviously, you end up believing in yourself that you can do it, and rightfully so. So, yeah, that's great. Well, again, I appreciate you coming on. I'm happy to talk to you about what's next. And, hopefully we can do another follow-up in a year or so, and maybe you've got a couple other ones under your belt. But either way, it's great for you to come by, and a lot of great knowledge for people. I'm sure people will get some really good nuggets out of this, and I appreciate you coming by.
Thank you all for listening to Before You Buy or Sell a Business. If you found value in this episode, please follow the show, leave a positive review, and share it with someone. For more information, check out jaredwjohnson.com. We'll see y'all next time.